Howdy, my name is Lance Lodcook, and today I'm going to talk about the impact of electromagnetic radiation on the Apis mellifera. So, the Apis mellifera is commonly known as the western honeybee. It is very important to agricultural and to the world as a whole, just in terms of being probably the biggest pollinators in the world and collecting a product that we all love, honey. So colony collapse disorder is basically the disappearance of bee colonies. The way that I've researched it and understood it was the bees, the worker bees, they basically leave the colony and they lose their the navigation back to the colony, and they do that when they go out to collect honey and to pollinate, and they never return to the colony. And when that happens, the colony will eventually collapse. And there is a lot of reasons for it, like the pesticides and the diseases and the climate change. And recent research has revealed that electromagnetic fields are another big problem that is making colony collapse disorder happen. Uh, so electromagnetic radiation, EMF, is a kind of radiation that includes the visual light, the radio waves, the gamma rays, and the X rays. And it's very important in society for humans with computers and cell phones, but there has been a lot of research done that shows that it is affecting the western honeybee. So the question we're going to ask today is, what role does electromagnetic radiation play? What role does electromagnetic radiation play in honeybee lives, and how does it lead to colony collapse disorder? So, electromagnetic radiation affects less honeybee queens. So, research. So, this study was done by two German scientists, and the research basically showed that they did a study with 10 different breeds of honeybee queens, and they had a control group that was not affected by cell phones, and they had a group that was. And the results showed that about 44.4% of the queen honeybees that were exposed to EMF, they had about a 44.4% reduction compared to the ones that were not uh, affected by EMF. Uh, Another effect is the productivity of the queen, and this study showed that there was showed how low exposure to EMF results in the honeybee queens having lower sexual reproductivity. And in this table, we're only going to look at the egg laying rate of the queen slash day, and these were affected by the mobile phones, and we have a control group that was not affected by EMF, and we have a group that was, and these were treated 10 minutes exposure for 10 days, and the results are pretty crazy. So for the control group, after the exposure, there was about 350.15 eggs that were laid by the queen honeybees, and the ones that were affected by EMF laid about 100 eggs per day. So, and not only did the treated honeybee queens lay less eggs than the control group, but it was also shown that there was that the treated group's eggs were not as healthy. They were less fertile compared to the control group. The next effect is on learning and memory, and this experiment studied the effect of power lines that emit EMFs on honeybees, and ELF stands for extremely low frequencies, and they analyzed the effects of ELF EMF exposure on proportion, which is PRE, of honeybees, and the results showed that the olfactory learning acquisition was reduced. And they used sugar water as a foraging source, and as you can see on the graph here, the control group was much higher in its senses when going to the sugar water compared to the ones that were exposed to EMF, uh, as you can see down here in red. And you can see here that the final learning level for the control group was much higher than the ones that were affected by all different kinds of volts of electromagnetic radiation. And this is very important because the foraging is very important, and the olfactories senses, they are very important to honeybees when it comes to the foraging, because if they don't have the senses like smell, then they won't be able to go out there and collect honey. And if they're not able to do that and to pollinate, then the colony will eventually collapse. The next thing I'm going to talk about is flight. So during this study, bees were exposed to AMFs during a tethered flight, and the results show that high levels of EMFs that can be experienced close to power lines modified tethered flight by increasing wing beat frequency. And the results here also showed that the higher the wing beat frequency, the less likely the bees are to land on flowers to pollinate, compared to the control group that was much lower, around the normal, for a normal wing beat frequency. And the last research that I did was on the foraging, and in this study, the effects of EMF were analyzed on free moving bees in a flight tunnel in the field, and the exposure to EMF significantly reduced successful outgoing passes and significantly increased failed outgoing passes. So here's the diagram of what the researchers did, and they had the beehive right here, and they had to fly through AMF coils to get to the feeder, and the results showed that the ones that were not affected by AMF, they got there a lot quicker and a lot more efficiently compared to the honeybees that were affected by um, EF AMF. And in conclusion, colony collapse disorder can be attributed to a lot of different causes, but the findings from these studies suggest that electromagnetic radiation may be a bigger contributor than initially hypothesized. Cell phone devices, power lines, and probably cell towers have a much more major impact on honeybees than we probably anticipated. And EMF radiation leads to a loss of the queen's pulpa, lower sexual reproductivity. It reduces a bee's ability to learn. It also reduces their memory retention, and it affects flight and foraging behavior. And the significance, we need to stop expansion of electromagnetic type controls for honeybee harvesting and enforce new policies. And there must be more research done to better understand the relative distance that a mission can be transmitted, so that there can be better policies to be formed. And we can begin control of EMF radiation on honeybee conservation and scientific use to reduce chances of CCD occurring more frequently in nature. And here's my works cited page. Thank y'all.